Okay, guys, shut up. I want to talk to you about Love Actually. So, in everyone's favorite segment of these videos, things Nikki could have done for this video but didn't do for this video, there is a 1-second shot in this movie in the nativity scene where there is a little boy and he's one of the kings, but he also has full Spider-Man face makeup on. And part of me really wanted to do the full video dressed as that child. And then I remembered that I have 25 subscribers and that's insane. I'm sorry if any of my 25 subscribers really wanted to see me dressed as a little boy, dressed as a king, dressed as Spider-Man, but I'm sorry, gay Halloween is over. So Love Actually. The rewatching of this film in my family has gone past the point of tradition and entered into the realm of superstition. Last year it involved rooting through my mom's storage locker on Christmas Eve so we could play it on a bootleg DVD because none of our streaming services had it for free, just so we could kind of have it on in the background. Throwaway lines from this film are embedded in my psyche where I think my knowledge of sports and how to do taxes are supposed to go. A lot of this movie I genuinely love rewatching year after year, and other parts make me increasingly filled with rage on every rewatch. So I thought there'd be no better topic for my December video than ranking Love Actually from its best to worst plot lines. Now I've seen videos ranking the relationships in this movie based on toxicity, and that's not what we're doing here. How toxic certain characters are may come into play because, of course, it can be infuriating when someone's absolutely inappropriate behavior is presented as romantic, but in other cases, watching a character make all the wrong decisions can be what makes a plot line so gripping. But mainly, this is ranking whether seeing the film cut to these characters makes my bells jingle or whether my mistletoe droops. So let's get started. Sarah, Carl, and Michael. So they let one American star in this film, and they really did her dirty. This is the tale of Sarah, played by Laura Linney, pursuing her workplace crush on Carl after being egged on by her boss, Alan Rickman, who definitely needs a meeting with HR for several reasons. Unfortunately, her romance, as well as the rest of her life, is constantly being interrupted by her brother, Michael, who is struggling with mental illness, with only Sarah as a support system. In a film that's full of personalities with perhaps not intense depth, but at least fun quirks, these are some of the most one-dimensional characters in the film, and there are a lot of women who are basically just there to be topless. Michael, the ambiguously mentally ill brother, exists only to make Sarah's life sad. Now, I'm not saying we can't tell stories about the hardships of being the sole caregiver for someone, but give us something that makes this guy a little more than a prop. Give us a scene that shows his struggles from his point of view, or maybe a scene of him supporting her in some way. Meanwhile, Carl is also absolutely just a prop, but a prop with abs, so that's nice for us. I've seen this film countless times, as I've said, and I'm still not sure what accent he's supposed to have. It sounds kind of French, kind of Spanish, but then why is his name Carl? Anyway, after not paying attention to her for the better part of the 2 years they've worked together, Carl decides he must have Sarah at their Christmas party. Then when things don't work out that night because of that rascally, mentally ill brother, he gives up completely. No follow-up. Thanks, Carl. As for Laura Linney, she is very charming as always in this film, but the script really doesn't give her much to play with besides her character talking too much and having thin eyebrows. Next up, Mark, Peter, and Juliet. If you're only vaguely familiar with Love Actually, you'll recognize this subplot as the one where the guy has the sign. Is it the ultimate romantic gesture or the ultimate red flag? Let's get into this mess. Mark is Peter's loyal best friend and also happens to be in love with his new wife, Juliet. Tragic, right? What's a guy gonna do? Confess to her? Confess to him? Just tell them that he needs a little space? Go to therapy? or act like the rudest motherfucker. Here's the thing. When Juliet asks Mark why his behavior is in line with someone who hates her guts, he says it's a self-preservation thing. So he's distancing himself from her. Okay. Except that's the only step he's taken to protect his feelings or anyone else's. Because he also spent her entire wedding filming her and only her, and kept the VHS so when he's done making her feel like crap about herself anytime they're together, he's at home watching these secret videos of her. Then there's the sign scene. My hot take is if you take him at his word that he actually has no ulterior motive except to finally be honest with her, it's not the creepiest thing he's done in the movie. It is, however, a batshit plan. What if Peter had answered the door? What if he had decided to come to the door when he heard it was carol singers? Was it an established fact that Peter hated carol singers? Is this his kryptonite? So much so that he has to block it out and can't tell the difference between what is clearly a tinny stereo playing a pre-recorded song and an actual group of live singers? Then, after Juliet gives Mark a pity kiss, he says, "Enough. Enough now." Implying that now he has the mortal fortitude to move on from her unrequited love. So how hard could he have been trying before? Now we're going to get into some middle ground plot lines that I like, but have some elements that still give me pause. So first up, David and Natalie. This is the tale of the Prime Minister of England falling in love with his catering girl. So, it's giving erotic Wattpad fiction. It's really fun in some ways. You have Hugh Grant breaking it down throughout 10 Downing Street to an 80s dance hit, which allegedly he hated doing, which just makes it better in my opinion. You got the bit at the end where in chasing down Natalie, he ends up having to carol with his chief of security and give a lift to a child in an octopus costume. There's nothing cuter than someone dressed as a little aquatic critter. I should know, I was in a professional touring show of Baby Shark for many years. But this is one of the plots that gets worse the more you think about it. This is the most important man in the country developing attraction for a much younger woman who is also a very junior member of his staff. Now, this could be justified if the attraction was completely mutual, and he does wait until she confesses in a Christmas card to actually pursue her. But what he also does is chooses to redistribute her without any discussion or warning when the president hits on her. Side note, whenever anyone brings up the president of the US as a concept, like not referring to anyone in particular, I do immediately picture Billy Bob Thornton. So the president hits on her and he decides instead of just asking her what happened or if she's all right, because, the most powerful man in the world just started kissing her in the 5 seconds he was out of the room, he decides he's never going to see her again. He also decides to throw away days of negotiation with the US and tell the whole world publicly that he thinks the president is a bully, which is presented as a very brave, cool thing to do. Also, if you didn't think Natalie's been through enough after all that, there's the casual fat phobia towards this completely average-sized woman, just in case you weren't aware that this was a rom-com set in the early 2000s. Speaking of the US, let's talk about perhaps the most ridiculous subplot, Colin's story. Colin is a loser who can't get a girl and plots to move to America, where he thinks the women will be 10 times hotter and more likely to sleep with him. And near the end of the film, we discover he is completely right. This relatively grounded film just grants this grown-up Weasley a bar full of models and lands him in a five-some at a speed which makes you think there must be some catch, like he's gonna wake up from a dream or these women are gonna straight up rob him. I'm not sure whether I'd rather see his undue confidence come back to slap him in the face or whether it's refreshing that the audience is left waiting for a shoe that never drops. But either way, it's a fun ride to watch. and a nice break from the sentimentality that otherwise abounds in this film. And if we're being honest, there's a kernel of truth to it. British accents just do something to North American women. I wish they didn't, but what can I say? We are Stockholm syndromed by the Commonwealth. And now that we've reached the middle, I'm going to do something a little bit different and take an intermission where I rank the plots of The Holiday from worst to best. Jude Law and Cameron Diaz are the worst. Jack Black and Kate Winslet are the best. That's it. Next up, John and Judy. Now, if you've only ever watched Love Actually on cable TV or maybe on an airplane, you might not actually know this plot exists. It is the simple tale of two movie stand-ins who engage in tentative, polite flirtation while simulating sex acts in front of a room full of cameramen. When I watched this movie as a kid, I didn't really understand what was going on in their scenes, but now as an adult who's been on actually several professional film sets, I still have no idea what's happening. Like, I understand what a stand-in is. They're the people that take the place of the actors while they are setting up lights and cameras so the crew know what it's going to look like. But I have no idea what kind of movie they're supposed to be filming. They're always in the same room. They are always setting up for a sex scene, but this shoot seems to last weeks. So it's either the highest budget porno or the mainstream movie with the most detailed, gratuitous sex scenes in the world. What I like about this plot is that the rest of the movie is filled with these very grand, all-encompassing love stories where the characters honestly don't have the opportunity to get to know each other very well, but still just know they're meant to be together. Here, we see two people taking the time to get to know each other, albeit with their tits out, and in the end, just going on a nice, normal date that goes well. And then going on another date the same night because the editors were not paying enough attention to the timeline. Next up, Jamie and Aurelia. So Colin Firth catches his girlfriend cheating on him with his brother and goes to clear his head and write a book in southern France. Here he meets Aurelia, his Portuguese housekeeper, and together they find a love that transcends language. It's corny as hell, and I love it very much. This plot falls into exactly what I was just talking about, where two people fall madly in love despite not knowing each other, but in this version, it's actually quite well done. We see through their conversations, where they're each speaking their own language, not comprehending each other, that their way of thinking is very parallel and they make a lot of sense together. This is compounded at the end when we realize that while Jamie's been learning Portuguese for her, Aurelia's been learning English for him. The whole scene where he's traipsing through the Portuguese side of Paris, I don't know, the part of my brain where I might have learned about the ethnic makeup of France is taken up by, oh, I hate Uncle Jamie, and ooh, would we call her chubby? In that scene where he's traipsing through the town to get to her with her father and sister, despite probably being deeply offensive to a couple different groups of people, is just quality comedy. If you ever hear me say just in case instead of just in cases, know that that's not me, that's Clone Nikki. And honestly, she probably had her reasons for taking over my life. Don't think about it too hard. Next up, Sam and Daniel. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for Liam Neeson to protect his child again, but this time it's not from kidnapping, it's from heartbreak. Daniel is newly widowed and finds himself as the primary guardian for his stepson Sam. When Sam asks him to help romance the popular girl in his class, they find themselves bonding and rebuilding their little family. I appreciate this plot being about familial love. One complaint I have is that the intro of the film makes you think these stories are going to span all different types and expressions of love, and then it's mostly about straight people who are horny for each other. This plot is about straight people who do end up horny for other straight people, but the important thing is they learn how to be a father and son first. Plus, there's a pretty epic chase throughout Heathrow Airport where, through the power of Christmas magic, the child is not declared a terrorist and shot dead. Billy and Joe. Billy Mack is an aging rock star who has created a comeback for himself by releasing a Christmas version of a non-Christmas song, like Sabrina Carpenter if Sabrina Carpenter were played by Bill Nighy, which sounds pretty great to me. Along the way, his manager Joe must babysit him through a press tour with more memorable moments than the Wicked movies. Sorry, Cynthia Erivo, this time of year I don't have room to hold space for anything that isn't Bill Nighy saying, "Hey kids, don't buy drugs. Become a pop star and they give them to you for free." I swear to God, come January, I'll care about other things. If there's anything to care about, in January, the world has been so calm and normal lately. Yes, this plotline, very good, in part because it connects to none of the others, and in a way also connects all of them together. But similar to Sam and Daniel, it is a story that expands the movie's definition of love a little bit. And again, the bar is so low. This movie is so straight. And yes, I know about the lesbians they deleted, but they were going to kill one of them anyway. The climax of this tale is Billy and Joe realizing that they are each other's best friends and soulmates, like an old British Jay and Silent Bob, and it's very beautiful in a simple way. And then we get to see Bill Nighy gyrating with his tits out. Finally, we have Harry and Karen, and this plotline has it all. A Rowan Atkinson comedy sketch about gift wrapping, a 2-minute uninterrupted scene of Emma Thompson breaking your heart with unironically the best acting performance of her life set to a Joni Mitchell song, and the man who played Hans Gruber and Severus Snape finally learning what it really means to play a villain. According to Wikipedia, Rowan Atkinson's character's name is Rufus. And I know in the original script he was supposed to be an angel. I know all the trivia, but that really just makes it more surprising that his name is Rufus. That's a name for dogs and Wainwrights. So Alan Rickman's character Harry, who is also Laura Linney's boss, who really wants to see his employees hook up, is married to Karen, played by Emma Thompson, and they are a perfectly adorable middle-aged couple with a pithy rapport and 2 precocious children. But when Harry's secretary Mia starts overtly hitting on him, because again, an HR department hates to see this office coming, Harry decides to, if not have a full-blown affair with her, definitely indulge her, culminating in him buying her an expensive necklace. And he is so British about it throughout that it's almost unclear if he's actually into this young woman or if he lets it go on out of politeness. But at the end of the day, he buys that necklace, and when Karen finds out it is not for her, it is the most gut-wrenching part of the movie and honestly the most iconic. You talk to anyone who likes this movie and they'll tell you after all these years they still haven't forgiven Alan Rickman, and that is the kind of emotional response that is not easy to achieve. A couple things that really drive me crazy about his actions. Karen warns him. She sees Mia flirting with him at the Christmas party and she just tells him, "Hey, seems like this pretty girl really likes you. Be careful. Don't do anything stupid." If you were him in that situation, wouldn't you just punch yourself for thinking you were ever slick, thank your lucky stars that your wife is cool, and shut the whole thing down? But the very next day, while this ride or die wifey is buying your mother a Christmas present, you're simping for your secretary over at the jewelry counter. Then there's the confrontation scene when Karen continues to break our heart and says, "You've also made a fool out of me. You've made the life I lead foolish." I got this script on lock. Next year, I am doing a one-woman show of Love Actually. Come see it. Toronto 2025. Love Nickley. We'll work on it. Because Karen throughout the film makes all these little self-deprecating jokes about how silly her day-to-day is compared to some other people, specifically Hugh Grant, the Prime Minister, who is also her brother. She's out there making lobster costumes, wrapping presents, making snacks, seemingly inconsequential stuff. But it's also the kind of stuff that adds up to something valuable if it's for people who want and appreciate that life. But through his action, Harry has told her that he'd rather have another life, be with someone else, and that she's essentially wasting her time trying to make the most of their domesticity. What a betrayal. I'm fine. It drives me crazy at the end of the film that it's implied they're still together, albeit a little frosty with one another. But Emma Thompson does get a kind of bad bitch haircut, so maybe she's having herself a little hot girl winter. Maybe she goes and has a sixsome with Colin and those American girls. I hope so. So that's Love Actually, from worst to best. Would you have ranked things differently? Let me know in the comments. If you think I'm on the nice list this year and deserve a present, you can like and subscribe. Oh, I hated that. As always, have a deliciously jolly day. Ha ha ha.